Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, and here we are not showing logs yet. What are we waiting for? That's a dirty lie. Let me just double check that that secret exists or not.
Can we maybe share a Tmux session just for us to see the configuration, not on stream?
Sure. Let's. In fact, we can stick a Tmux URL into the chat here. Let me set that up. So there should be a. Let me just grab both of these here. Come to our chat, which is here. So there's a web URL and an SH URL for read-only sessions to what I'm doing here on the screen. And I am just double checking where this maybe put something. Yes, I put it in the wrong namespace. So let's just do that again. We are going to find our cluster. Yep, we're going to kill the cluster. And we're going to do that one more time. Thank you. All right, so see if that is deleted. Yes, it has. Okay, that's better. Awesome. So let's hopefully I'm not missing anything this time. I'll get rid of this window. Come back here. Come back here. There we go. So I'm going to open that up in a window on the terminal also. So that we can do other things over here. And I'm going to open up a connection to the provisioning host. Where we're going to wait for the Bootstrap VM to show up. So the way this, sorry, go ahead.
Another private repo to hold all the YAMLs for.
Yes, I posted that in the issue, actually, a link to it for this reinstall. Let me see if I can.
We will figure out a way how to get those secrets into the operate first repos as well, so it's managed in there. But for now, yeah, it's a private repo.
So Lana, anyone else? I'm sticking. This is the GitHub issue where we're tracking this reinstall. And that has a link to the private repository in it that has the install manifests. Because of the structure that ACM expects for input, I'm generating those from templates right now because there's a lot of duplication of information involved at the moment. So we've raised that with the ACM team right now, but that's nothing that's going to change anytime soon. So we have a cluster creation failed message there. Why is that? Looks like it failed to connect. to libvirt. So let's see if we can figure out why. So we know that libvirt is actually up and running. Did we get any connections? Doesn't look like it. The time is now 10:11. Other than random people around the world trying to hack into the server, it doesn't look like we actually got a connection there. So let's double check. Let's get rid of this cluster because we're not going to need this again. So one of the exciting parts with the current ACM interface is if your cluster install fails, you destroy the cluster and then you resubmit it to get it to go again. So if we come back here to our provider connections, and I'm just going to do this in a different window because now this is going to be showing passwords and things. Where's my chat window? So we have our libvirt URI set to this. I'm just going to make sure that that works by trying that connection from my local system using the same key there. Gonna just add in our private key for this install. Yes, we know that. Should be the only private key there. It is not. Let's try that again. Oh, I know it's doing that. All right. That's better.
So the SSH key was missing, right?
So not from our configuration. The issue that I had on my system here is that I had several of my own SSH keys loaded and I wanted to make sure I wasn't using them. So I wanted to have an SSH agent that only has the provisioner key in it so that if I had a successful connection, I could be sure it was because that key was correct as opposed to it was failing over and using one of my existing keys. And so the provisioner connection works totally fine, which is great. So I'm going to take a look at how that secret is defined. Let's do this. That's interesting. Oh, because I destroyed the cluster. Right. All right. Well, let's do.
So for the people on the stream, what Lars is doing right now, he's in the, you can see it in Tmux window. If you, can we pass this link? Is it fine to pass to the chat to, or I don't know if they see the chat on the live stream directly. So I'm gonna forward it to the operate first room. So they can access it.
So actually, it would be really useful to know if the chat shows up on the live stream somehow.
It shows now because you're showing the window. With the
now I am, right. But ideally, it would show up in a way that people could like click and copy links from the chat.
Yeah.
If someone can double check that, that would be awesome.
I'm asking in the room.
No.
No? Okay. That's a shame. Okay, well then, sure. I guess we'll just have to copy everything into the operate first chat. Is that where I want to put stuff instead?
You can put it in the chat. I'll move it to the.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna feel a bit more useful here.
All right, so what I'm doing right now is I just want to verify that the secret key and the provisioner matches what we expect to, what we're submitting. So here we have the provisioner connection. We're going to dump that to a file, and then I'm going to just switch windows temporarily so that what do I want this. And we're going to extract the metadata from that one. So let me come back. Okay, grab that. And all right, so there is our SSH private key. That looks totally legitimate, but let's just save that to a file. And let's just check the key checksum against what we have in that is the same key. That's great. Okay. So our provisioning URL works and the key is correct. Let's take another look at those logs if they're still up. Get rid of this one, come back to here.
They won't because the namespace was deleted.
No, that's okay. I kicked off the install again while we were doing stuff so I could look at the secrets. But we're not going to get very good wrapping here. So let's do this instead. That should do it. Let's just dump that to a file. Take a closer look at what's going on there. It's not a very useful error message. And we don't get any other information here. All right. Well, let's go and just manually reset the provisioner connection and see if that works. Oh, wait, let's see if it's using the right one. If we come back to here, this doesn't tell us anything, does it, useful? No.
Maybe on the provisional port to see what it's mounting.
We can certainly go into the Hive pod there. And this puts me into the installer pod. We actually want Hive pod. No. And let's come back here. Well, it mounts the private key in at least 2 different places, it looks like. That's great. Output logs, install config, pull secrets, SSH keys, and libvirt SSH keys. No, we don't have this here. No, we don't. Can we get there from here? Yes, we can. Do we have SSH? Yes, we do. And the SSH key works, and we have connectivity. All right. Well.
Maybe it's something with the, no, it's not at the service that Livestream, because you were able to connect from your local laptop, right?
Yes. We know that the libvirt URL works. The private key is correct. We can get there from here. Let's see. Let's see if maybe we have a provisioner set incorrectly somewhere. That's going to be. Yeah, let's just hide that. Going to a different window so I can do that. What I want to make sure is that we're actually referring to the correct provisioner connection. And let's see if we come here. All right. Where does this go again? All right, I'm going to go back to the UI here, and I'm just going to fill it all in by hand briefly, and just compare that to what we're using now in our YAML, which came from the work that Alana and I did on Friday, and we just modified that. So let's get rid of this cluster. Back to cluster management, add a cluster, create a cluster named 0, bare metal, release image, provider connection. So where did that fill in over here? Let's see.
Does the known host match? Because when you were connecting to it from the pod, it still wanted to add a new known host.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if the SSH connection uses the normal known host file, but we could definitely check that. Let's take a look. Let's see if I just come back to the shared window here. And that's what we've got there. And that's what we are putting in. I think it looks the same.
Mm.
Okay, let's do this. So let's get rid of the IP address here so that they're the same length. Yeah, those are still the same.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but what I was curious about here, if we take this YAML, so the image, private key reference goes there. All right, I think that must be embedded in the install config. So if we look at the install config.yaml, does that have the all right, so we are missing, I think, a libvirt URL. That would do it. All right. So that should be fairly simple then. So we want to look at our templates. Yes, because I based this off of the install config from the old CNV cluster, which did not use a remote libvirt URI. So we need to stick this here. Let me do this actually, come back to this window. I think I can do that in the shared window safely. So we need there. So we are missing the libvirt URI and the install config that gets passed up to the ACM. And that's why it was trying to directly access what looks like a local libvirt socket rather than trying to connect remotely.
And this is not the right URL. This is a CRC cluster.
You are correct. There, now it's correct. All right, I'm just double checking it against the CRC one to make sure that I'm not missing anything else obvious there. I think the rest of that looks fine. Other than the libvirt URI, I think that all looks typical. All right, let's try that again. And we're just regenerating anything from templates. Should be fairly quick. All right, and now, I didn't want to do that. I want to do that. Do we have our namespace? We do not, okay. Make sure that I'm in the right namespace. I am. And spin up our cluster again and come back here to clusters. Open that back up, put our logs back up, close the old logs, and wait a second. Wrong logs, there we go. There's an excellent chance that as the installer starts to boot the hardware, that we're going to run into some problems. We've seen with earlier versions of OpenShift where some of the hardware involved in this install doesn't always boot from the net like it's supposed to. And in that case, it just reboots into whatever OS is on the local disk. So we're going to watch for that and see if that bites us this time. Oh, hey, look at that. We have a new error. So we are getting a host key verification failed. Which are odd. Let's double check that host key value in our install config, which we can't do in this window. And that's here in the cluster deployment. Where we are pretty sure that that is correct. Let's just resubmit that.
Lars,
Yes.
just one little thing before you try to redo the install for this
Sure.
failed attempts. Can you do one more change for me in the cluster add-ons?
Sure. What would you like?
To the application management, application manager part at the Argo CD cluster through So if it succeeds, we can automate the management via Argo CD. I don't know if a change in the cluster add-ons is like having any effect on rebooting the cluster or something. So if we get this change in, maybe we don't need to reboot later.
Sorry, say again. I did not follow all of that.
Yeah, sorry. Since the ICM22, you can manage the applications via Argo CD, which we have deployed on the infra cluster. And this setting in the cluster-led add-ons allows you to, like, ACM will create secrets for you automatically in the infra cluster, so Argo CD can pick up the cluster automatically.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So just adding that to the cluster
add-on config.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
And I don't know if change in this cluster add-on config means like rebooting the cluster afterwards or something. So let's get the change in before we actually install the cluster.
I can do that right now. So it goes directly in the spec application manager.
Yeah. I just didn't want it to cause any.
So actually, so here's an interesting question. There is already an application manager key, which right now just says enabled.
Yes,
and
that's the different application management stack.
So should we replace enabled, or should we add an additional key?
I think you can replace enabled because we're not planning to use the ACM way of deploying applications right now.
Okay. So Argo CD cluster 2.
And I would do a PR for that private repo, but I can't fork it. So that's why I'm asking you here.
Sure. All right, so I've made that change as well.
Thank you.
Excuse me. All right, let's just come back here to the shared window, make sure that that looks the way we expect it to. And it does. All right. So we can delete the cluster from here also via the command line. And let's try again and see where we end up. Whoops. Looks like that enabled key is required. So let's add that back in. Update there.
What does the command make publish do?
What that does is so let me just make this bigger for a second and come back out here. So this repository has a bunch of tooling to template the manifests. And what make publish does is, first of all, it makes sure that everything is built. And then it takes the manifest directory here, which is where all of the generated output goes, as well as any static YAML manifest that we have, and it moves those over to the master branch, so that someone looking at the master branch always sees just the YAML manifests without all the associated machinery around it.
Okay, cool.
I get this out of the way. I get this out of the way. I want to bring back this. Nope. Still failing host key verification. So let's go take a look at that pod. Actually, probably better. Oh, sad. It exits the containers when they fail like that rather than leaving them running. So we can't inspect the local file system. All right. Well, I'm at a loss. Anyone have any thoughts?
No idea.
All right. So let's grab this message here. I didn't really want that quote. Okay, fine. We're taking the quotes. And we're just going to come over here to the operate first chat. And let's see if Chris Doan is handy. Nope, he's not online. All right, well, we'll try anything. And neither is Randy online right now. And while we are waiting to see if anyone is around, I'm going to bring the install back, and we're just going to take a look at the known host file in that Hive pod and see if it gets populated with anything while the install is running.
Maybe we can try to rerun it and just enter the container, the pod.
Right. That's what I was just saying. I'm going to bring the install back so it's running again. Then we can go into the pod, see if the known host file is populated with anything in the Hive container, and then double check that against what we believe to be correct. All right, there we go. So, is this really our home? Okay, home Hive, that looks better. So that's that key. And if we then just do this, that's got a different key in it, doesn't it? Well, let's take this key then. think I'll do it this way. There we go. All right. So kill that install. And take that host key and find our
It looks like the same key, just paste twice, right?
Oh, was it? I didn't. Too
From
late.
from what I see in the Tmux session.
So something was different there.
In the known hosts, we have the same key twice, but I don't think this is just one liner.
Wait,
Yeah,
no.
it
So
looks
see,
like-
no. But so I'm looking here. If can people see this when I highlight like that?
Yes.
So that was the key before, and then after the connection, we have this down here, which is noticeably longer.
Ah,
But there's like another IP address in the middle and
Yeah.
a new host.
the IP is different,
Oh, that's
but
that's
the key is the same key.
No, I see. It added the that's weird. That looks like it looks like it just goofed up the known host file. There should be a new line there.
Yeah,
That
just
is,
pipeline it.
yeah, well, that's fine. So, yeah, I don't know where that 128 address is coming from. So first of all, that address looks incorrect. The second address is the correct one. What I can do is just put both of those lines into our known host file that we're sticking into the install config. So let's do that.
And we already make sure that we don't have the problem with the new liner, right?
Yes. Yeah, the SSH private key is fine.
But the new line is missing somewhere else.
Yes, it moved.
We took it.
All right.
Borrowed.
So if we set the SSH known hosts here, let's just see what happens. So save this. Oh, damn it. All right, let's try that. Wait for our pod to come back. That doesn't look right still. Oh, no. Yeah, okay, hold on a second. That is obviously not getting the updated value yet. So where is that coming from? Just switch windows. Yeah, I apologize for not being able to do some of this online. There's just secrets in all of these files here, and it's kind of a shame that I can't always show what I'm doing.
Well, I think for the initial trial of this doing it transparently, that's good enough. For next time, we will figure out a way how to show secrets without showing them.
AI that reads and blur the screen.
Just blur the stream. Stream just 4 pixels.
Because, sorry, here's the answer. What I was saying earlier on is that there's a lot of duplication of information in the install. The known host information is in 2 different places. It's in the provider connection, which is over here, which defines the connection to the libvirt instance, but it's also embedded in the cluster deployment resource, which I'm guessing is what maybe ends up populating the known host file in the Hive container. So it needs to be updated in these 2 separate places. And that is why we are having a problem right now. So we're just going to bring that over here. And update that. And here we go again.
Fingers crossed.
Now we should at least be able to tell fairly quickly whether our changes took. That looks better. And if we try connecting to this system now, that looks better. All right, let's go back to our logs here.
So what are the issues that we find out so far? The missing libvirt command?
So we're missing the libvirt URI from the install config. That was really the first missing bit of information. It looks like there was an inappropriate known host entry for the provisioner, probably using the one from the wrong host, or it had the wrong IP address on it, maybe.
Okay.
So, but we don't know for sure we fixed that problem yet. So wait about 5 minutes.
Yeah, but right now we know that the problem that having known hosts defined in 2 different places is not
so
a good thing.
It's not just the known host file. If you're familiar with the IPI installer, there is an install config.yaml that you create, which includes things like the list of hosts, their IPMI credentials, their hardware profile, a ton of information about them. With ACM, that same information needs to be in the install config, but it's also in the cluster deployment. And then the install config is embedded as a base64 encoded secret as part of the install also. So you have a chunk of information that's in 2 different places. So you have lots of opportunities for making a change in one and not in the other.
And did you already raise this as an issue, or do we
Yes.
still need?
So
Yeah,
we had a talk with the ACM folks this morning. So we're participating in kind of a high-touch beta program where we're going to be meeting regularly with some representatives from the ACM team. And one of the open questions right now is if we have things that aren't bugs, but they're more like RFEs, where is the best place to put those? And we just had that meeting at 9 o'clock this morning, and they're going to get back to us. The answer we hope is going to be either one of Bugzilla or Jira, so that it goes someplace where we can track the status of them and see what kind of response they're getting.
Good. And for the missing libvirt URI, that's also something that should be probably caught by the validation, right? Because you don't want to spin up a new cluster within the local cluster usually.
Right, and I think in general, it looks like there are probably several opportunities for additional data validation in ACM. Like if you saw that UI I was looking at earlier in the add a cluster here, let me just bring up the UI for a second. If you go in here and you just don't select a release image, and then you do everything else, you can try to kick off the install, and at least with 2.1, it does try to kick off the install, and it's only after it's been running for a bit that it says, hey, you're missing the release image.
I think that what's marked in red, it won't able you to create the click the create button.
You think? Okay.
Yeah.
Because we certainly ran into an issue with that where we generated the YAML without the release image, because you can see here as you make changes, it updates this YAML to the right, copied and pasted it and ran the install, and then it fell over after a while.
Yeah, I think you can run the YAML, but in the UI you cannot click on create without the red.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see how that goes. So I think, yep, we've gotten substantially further in the install now. Now it is waiting for the Bootstrap VM to come up, which just did. All right. Let's come over here. And let's just do this actually.
I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to need to drop for a bit. I have another meeting and I'll be back in half an hour.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, so what we're watching in the bottom right panel here is the console for the Bootstrap VM, which is the virtual machine that the install process spins up to actually drive the IPI install. And what it does is it first sits there trying to fetch IP addresses, which it's going to fail at because this machine actually owns IP address allocation for the provisioning network. But once that fails, it will finish booting and we'll eventually have some IP addresses we can log into so that we can take a closer look at the provisioning process. All right, so what we're waiting for here, you can see it's showing its IP address on the public network. We're waiting for it to show us the provisioning network IP, at which point it will be closer to being ready.
So for future setups, we need a single provisioner that will provide this work of creating the boot VM and having the leg to the the ACM need to be connected to the provisioning network himself, right?
Yes, because so with the current release of OpenShift, ACM uses the provisioning network to talk to the Ironic instance. In 4.8, that will no longer be true, and you won't need to have access to the provisioning network. So let's get out of here for a moment. We're going to log in to our Bootstrap VM, or we will shortly. Oh, except we're going to want to use, we need to get the private key over here onto this system because we haven't yet. Oh.
Why do we use the
No,
not the public IP to connect to it?
You can use the public IP actually. I just usually wait for the provision network IP to come up because that means it's gotten far enough in the process. The reason it's not working right now is because the provisioning machine itself has an address on the old network. So let's fix that. Let's spell things correctly. Said remove IPv4 addresses. There we go. And then we want to there we go. All right, now we see the pods that are, sorry, the containers that are cropping up on the Bootstrap VM here. There are 2 container runtimes that run on the Bootstrap VM. So Podman is used to run one suite of services. And then there are also a bunch of CRI control based containers that implement the Kubernetes API. What we're waiting for here are the ironic containers to spit up.
They didn't turn on yet, right?
The conductor is up, but the remaining ironic containers are not running yet. There they go. They just showed up. And let's cancel that then. Let's just run the logs for the ironic conductor here for a bit. I'm going to bring up, or try to bring up, Windows to the iDRACs on all of those systems. Give me a second here. All right, that's fine. Just get a couple of these logged in. I don't think that's going to work. Yeah, I didn't think so.
So we also want to open a console to the servers to see what is going on.
Well, so there are a bunch of servers, and I was trying to figure out the best way of doing that. Maybe the best way of doing that. One second here. So possibly, we can do something like that. Let's see if we get anything interesting there. And pop-ups. So that failed to establish the connection there. Let's see, why is that? Oh, because it's using the wrong password. All right, fine. So let me change the window I'm sharing here and see if we can share the console window for one of these servers. So if we stop presenting here, present now, a window. So this is the console. First of all, is that showing up for people? Yes, okay, this is the console for one of the controllers where it is starting to net boot into the install environment. So the first thing that the installer does is it boots all of the nodes into a discovery process so it can figure out what hardware is attached.
So we were able to connect to all the servers on the list?
So in terms of what? In terms of getting the console opened?
No, for the installer to connect to everybody, to all the servers.
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking yet.
I see in the terminal that we have an error to unable to connect. So
yeah, this is not an important error. This is just
okay.
me not getting. Let me just do this instead.
From your local computer.
Yeah, this is just me
Okay.
trying to get an IPMI serial connection, and it's not working. I will work on that in a second. Let me just go back here for now in this window.
Okay, great.
But that's not a very exciting console window right now, is it? So let me come back here while that's running and see if I can figure out what's going on with that. Oh, I bet I know what it was. Yeah, there we go. I was using the wrong host name there. So let's take a look here in the web browser and see where things are. So we got a blank screen. We got this doing something.
Can you explain about why we created another branch for templates and we are running from that branch?
So I created that because I'd like the ugly machinery I'm using for templating right now to be separate from the manifests, so that, like, if we have support questions, we can point them at the master branch, which just contains the generated manifests. They can look at those, see exactly what we're submitting up to the cluster. So I'm a little suspicious of this console that has gone blank here. I'm opening up a couple other console windows on my system to see what they're doing.
So you are using this branch just for the development?
Yes.
And not to be our source of truth. Yeah.
So looking, that's a weird selection. There are a couple of the nodes that have successfully powered up. There are still several that appear to be off. Let me come back here to our provisioner. And let's see what Ironic knows about so far. So this is a generated username and password that exists for the duration of the install, but then they go away. So I want to see the v1 nodes. Oh, we don't have JQ installed. Well, that's a shame. All right, so there are 3 nodes populated right now. Let's see if we can figure out which ones these are. Can we tell from here? Oh, we have an inspect failed on one of them. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on there. So if we grab, whoops, come back. Grab the details for that node. Uh-oh. So the reason why I say uh-oh is that we see here a no disk satisfied root device hints error. And on the previous cluster, what that meant was your hardware is too old and you're not going to be able to run OpenShift 4.7 on it. So let's see if we can figure out exactly what controller is on this hardware. So this was, we have a MAC address here. Boot mode, chassis, ports. So what I'm trying to dig down to is get enough information that I can actually identify this particular system. Oh, there we go. 10.0.5.12. Okay. 10.0.5.12. That is OS control 2. All right. So in theory, that is this window here. Get rid of a couple things here. Okay, so that's not going to be useful. So let's come back here, and we want to be in the ironic inspector container. I get there? Not easily. All right, so let's do this. Save that to a file so we can do something with it. Okay, so this system, it did identify disks on, and this system is B31C. Well, that seems like a lie. So this is the inspection data for OS Control 2. And if we look at the inspection data here, it did identify a disk. Make sure I'm don't have any other lines in here. No, just the one line. So that looks like it has legitimate data there. But if we go back to our all right. So we're going to have to poke at this, I think, a little bit more because now we're hitting hardware inspection problems. Let's
But it didn't happen on all the servers, right?
So I think
them.
right, but so here I think is the problem in this case. I think it's an invalid root device hint. So let's come back. I think we're going to have to kill and restart this install. So here we're using the Del RAID hardware profile in OpenShift. And I think on this system, the root disk must be the wrong device. So it's not matching this root device hint that's here in the data that's provided to Ironic, this highlighted bit here. So let's just briefly.
All this information that you just showed, it's generated by the discovery process that you talked about?
Yes. Well, so, right. So the information in the install config is used to populate information in Ironic about the nodes that you're installing on. And then the inspection process gathers information about the actual devices available on the system. So what we're looking at here is the node information. This is populated from install config. When I was inside the inspector container here, log Ironic inspector, looking in this file, this is what comes back from the inspection process.
For example, he knows that it's a Dell computer server. Yeah.
Right. And what we see here is that the discovered disk is does not match the root hint. So if we just take this here, copy that, come back and look at exactly what that looked like on the node there. And yeah, so one of those fields is off. All right. So here's the issue we're trying to resolve by setting the root device hint in the first place. 3 of these servers have additional disks. And you want to make sure when you run the install that you're installing OpenShift onto the correct disk. And the root device hint is supposed to help with that if you've got a system with multiple drives available, so it doesn't just pick a random one and use that instead. The alternative solution here is that we go into the RAID manager on those pieces of hardware and disable everything except the disk that we want to be our target, and then re-enable the storage drives after the fact. So I'm probably going to go ahead and do that, even though I was hoping to avoid that. So let's get out of here.
Is it just happening on 4.7, or maybe if we go?
Well, the fact that it's happening there means that our install is already dead. So the install is not going to proceed. So what we're going to do is, even if it doesn't hit the systems that we're actually using the root device hint for, what we can do is we can disable the disks other than the root disk on the Dell hardware. Then we can remove the root device hint from the install config so that it will just use whatever disk it finds, which on all the systems then will be a single root disk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So
yeah, just wonder maybe this problem will not happen on 4.6, but we want to go with the latest. So yeah. We need to fix that.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to that I don't think that the methods available for specifying a target disk are all that powerful right now. So I think you can provide this hardware profile, which uses a built-in root device hint, but I don't think there's any way to give like a specific device identifier of some sort. So we're going to get rid of our Bootstrap VM, and we're going to come back to our cluster, and we're going to destroy the cluster. And then we're going to find our storage hardware, and we're going to bring up a bunch of consoles, and I'm going to fiddle around in the RAID manager.
Can you switch back to the Safari, not Safari, the Firefox window?
Yes, give me just a second. Where is my meet? There it is. Stop presenting, start presenting. All right. So let me close this. Now I need to bring up my lists of hosts over here. I'll make sure I'm on the right system. 1734 is not one of the ones I want. So I want 1938. Sure, that is one of the ones I want.
This host YAML is for configuring the bare metal servers?
So this is the Ansible inventory that is the input to the templating process.
Mm-hmm.
So here we're running the Ansible template module to generate this list of manifests. And so, for example, if we take a look at the cluster deployment manifest, not that one, I want the template. So if we take a look at the cluster deployment manifest, whoops, I missed again. Tab, edit, templates, cluster deployment data. There we go. Then, for example, we iterate over the list of hosts in the OpenShift group to generate all of those host entries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we do the same thing in the install config also.
And where you specify about the disk, the details?
So that is the hardware profile here, where if we come back to the host file, that is specified right here. So we're using the same hardware profile for all of this hardware, because it is all Dell hardware with the Dell RAID controller on it. So what we're going to end up doing is just setting this back to, I think, default.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask, because we use the default, yeah.
Yeah, the only reason this is here is because on the storage machines, there's more than a single target disk available. Yeah. And it's not clear which one the process will pick by default. So it might make sense to try it once, just setting it to default, not making any other changes, because the process of going through the BIOS on the 3 systems, it's going to take a while to wait for all of them to boot and get into the RAID controller and muck with that and then reboot. Well, let's do it anyway, just to be sure. Well, what time is it? It's 11:30. Let's try it once with just using the default hardware profile and see if that behaves any differently. Let's, we're going to go through, make sure all of our systems are powered off. Yeah. All right, so the power is off on all of the systems. Great. All right, so we'll save this. Should just be that one difference, yes. And just double check our syntax there. Yep, okay. All right, come back to our cluster UI, and here we go again.
So the only difference here is that you set it to default. Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I was just wondering, what's the difference with you recruiting the cluster here? Is it only that you set the hardware profile to default, or?
Yes, we're just retrying it with the default hardware profile to see what happens. That should solve the specific problem of the one system failing inspection, not having any disks, but it may or may not introduce new problems on the systems that have multiple drives available.
Okay.
I have a small question while we're waiting.
Sure.
It's about our MLC infra cluster.
Yes.
Do we want to add a SSL authentication? Because I noticed that I think that we have this arrow that says the red.
So do we want to use a SSL certificate that's recognized by browsers? Yes, 100% we do. So we have two options for that. What I'm doing with this install on the Zero cluster is I've generated a Let's Encrypt certificate, which is included in the configuration repository, which we'll be using. And we can do the same thing for mock infra. A better solution would be getting Certificate Manager to do that for us automatically. So I don't know if anyone's got prior experience setting that up. If not, that is something for us to look into. If someone does know how to do that, then putting the configuration in place would be awesome. We could use the mock infra as a test case.
I saw some like cluster issuers and stuff in the previous CMV cluster for Cert Manager. Was that just like you playing around with it, or did
That
you
was
actually?
totally that. It never actually worked.
Okay. All right.
Is it something that's related to OpenShift, or is it an external service like you have on the MOC with the SSO?
Well, so Cert Manager is a tool that runs on OpenShift, and then it talks to things like Let's Encrypt to issue the certificates, and in theory, it can manage the verification process. Although, depending on what options it has there, it may or may not be easy for us to use. So are you familiar with how Let's Encrypt does validation for certificates?
Not yet.
So when you request, so anybody can request a certificate from Let's Encrypt. And you say, I want a certificate for API.0.massopen.cloud. And you have to prove somehow that you have ownership of that domain. And it can do that a couple of ways. You can host specific content at a URL that it will check. It will say, here's the secret key, put this in the URL, and then it will check for that and to verify that you're able to do that, and then issue the certificate. It can also do DNS-based validation, where it will give you a secret key, and then you have to place that in like a specific text record, and it will check for that before it issues the certificate. And in particular, for wildcard certificates, which we need for OpenShift right now, the way it's configured, I believe that only works with DNS verification. And the issue with DNS verification is that the tooling that's making the request, in this case Cert Manager, needs a way to talk to a DNS server in an automated fashion so that it can create the necessary text records and then remove them when it's done. And depending on what that support looks like, it may or may not work with the particular DNS setup that we're using in the MOC environment. So that's the question.
But I think that this is possible, just a long way to do.
Yeah, and I think in the short term, so I think we should take a look at that. Maybe I will after if this is done, or maybe someone else wants to do that. But we should take a look at that in the short term, because if it's easy to set up, we should just do it. If it's not easy to set up, we should manually issue a Let's Encrypt certificate for the mock infra cluster and just get that in place. And those certificates are good for, I believe, 90 days.
Yeah. Great. A task like that, I think this is going to the list of day 2 operations for any cluster that we are setting up in the future.
Yeah.
Hello again.
Welcome back. Oops.
How is it going?
Well, I think since you were last here, we killed and restarted it again.
It's been nearly an hour.
Yep.
We're waiting for you to come back.
We did.
Oh, thank you.
So what we ran into was the inspection process on the hardware, where it gathers information about the devices on the target nodes, ran into a problem where it's decided one of the target nodes didn't have a disk available when in fact it did. And the reason it did that is because the hardware profile that we were using in our install config document was the Dell RAID hardware profile, which should in theory match our Dell servers using the Dell RAID controller. But the device ID of the disk was different than expected, and so that caused it to fail. So what we've done is store everything down, set it back to using the default hardware profile, which may work or it may introduce problems later on. We're kind of seeing what's happening at this point. So we're just about back where we were an hour ago.
When you did the API installation, what profile did you specify?
Well, we did the API installation at different times. Like we started without the storage nodes, for example, whereas this time we're doing it all at once. So we'll see. We tried with both, I think, but it has been a while.
If it doesn't work, can we split the node install to different sections, like do the storage nodes separately? Would it help?
So the storage nodes so we can always add nodes after the cluster is up. So if the storage nodes end up being a problem, we can just exclude them from the install.
Yeah. Interesting.
But it's a thing that we would like to try again sometimes in the future, to install it with the cluster node, with the storage nodes.
Yes.
I think like once we have the other cluster, the prod one, we can freely do whatever we want with this cluster.
Right.
And we can tear it down every week if we want to. And if we have the time for it to sit on it a day every week.
Yeah. So To be clear, I expect us to run into a number of issues during the install today because we are trying it for the first time on this hardware where we haven't done this particular release with ACM and all of those. So I'm expecting us to run into these kinds of problems. So I suspect that we will be restarting this install at least a couple more times before we complete it.
I expect the same. I just don't know if it's going to be still Monday for Ilana.
No, that's
when we
okay.
finish.
I think we should give away subscription for each restart that we do, like strippers.
All right, the ironic containers are starting to come up.
And Ilana, you have just 1 hour more than I do, right? You have 6:45.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so it may be tomorrow for me as well. By the time we finish.
I discovered this week that I think in India, I'm not sure, it's a half-hour different, not hours back. Yeah.
Half an hour. That must be crazy for people like trying to communicate with the rest of the world and being offset by half an hour. If it's like full hours, that's pretty straightforward conversion, right?
Yeah.
Adding 30 minutes somewhere.
Yeah, it's too confusing.
Here I'm just seeing what's up and what's on. So the 3 controllers are in theory powered on. I'm gonna close some of these windows here because they're just gonna time out their credentials anyway. All right. And
We also been talking about the encryption for the SSL certificate and how to generate this. And we've been asking if somebody has experience with that. So maybe you have.
About what kind of encryption? Like,
This is for infra clusters route, like right now it's not using.
so I would
TLS.
say not about encryption, about changing the default ingress certificate on the cluster to one that is recognized by, major browsers.
We're talking about cert manager and using that to do it if possible.
okay.
If possible, I mean, whether it's easy to do, I guess.
Okay, was there a question hidden in it, or?
No, just if somebody had experience with that.
In particular, with configuring cert manager under OpenShift to automate that process.
I don't,
Okay.
but we definitely have places where to ask. So we will ask and get somebody do it for us. Or teach us how to do it.
Yes, the latter. So let's try bringing up a console window here. Now that things are happening on that screen. I'm curious. Let me come back to the window here. I'm going to see if I can present just one of my screens, because if I can present a screen, that would be much easier. So if I say my entire screen, no, I can only do the whole thing at once. Well, that's not going to be very useful.
If you are you using Firefox?
I am using Firefox.
Yeah, if you have Chrome, Chrome lets you select a monitor. I always go to Chrome for that. Yeah.
I can try switching this particular meet. Let me try joining here. Oh, that's not going to work while I'm connected. Durr. I will look at that in a bit. I'll just go back to the UI here. Well, while looking at Chrome there for a second, I managed to have blocked Firefox's ability to share the screen. That's exciting. All right.
Firefox doesn't like that you are checking the...
Yeah, well, now it tells me share the screen, blocked temporarily. Can I do this? Maybe it will reprompt me. There we go. All right. So at least we can get this window back and have our log. All right, so let's see if we've had any returns. Where am I right here? Any returns from the inspection log yet? Not yet. Yeah. All right, so what just happened? Let me share a different window here. Where's my meet window? So if we stop presenting and start presenting and we pick a window, and we pick this window. So what we see here is that rather than booting off the network, this system has successfully booted back into the operating system on its local disk. So at this stage, the install is once again shot. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to power everything back on, and then we're going to do a wipe disk on all of the nodes so that they don't have a bootable local disk. And I'm going to take this opportunity to pause myself briefly, at least, and go grab a drink of water.
Once you start wiping it?
What was that question?
Are you going to start wiping it first, or should we do a 10 minutes break before?
Sure, we can do a 10-minute break and I'll come back and do it. I mean, the wipe disk is really just going to be SSH into the system and run wipe disk-A and then power things off.
But it's exciting.
It's tremendously exciting. So let's take a 10-minute break then.
Let's do it.
In fact, I see that it's about noon actually for me. So if we could turn that into, say, a 20-minute break, I will grab some food.
Let's do 2 10-minute breaks.
There we go. So I will be back then in about 20 minutes and we'll continue on.
Okay.
Sounds good.
See you. I'm going to prepare a coffee too. Yeah, I think.
You have a dinner time, right?
That was supposed to be the stop the camera button, not the hang up button.
I thought you're back already.
Finish.
Good. Let's put up a banner that we're on a 20-minute breaks.
Yeah.
And we'll resume.
Is the stream have this option to create
No.
Is
I'm
there
gonna
like an
write it.
admin panel or something? Or
And-
how are you doing this stuff?
What kind of stuff?
Like enabling recording, and do I not have like privileges for that?
I think so. We have a stop streaming option.
Yeah, I think all of us can do whatever, like these things. To add the stream, I needed to do it in the invite before I like opened the invite. But
Oh, I see. Okay. The take dot stuff. That's where got it.
No other useful features.
Yeah, I was trying to see if there was a way to like enable chat, but I guess not. Oh. Okay, I'm gonna have food too. Be right back.
yeah, I might try to look at it from the invite. But it's tracking. No. Live stream. No. Okay, so the live stream is basically just a YouTube UI kind of thing with a video, so it's not even having the Meet layout and things. So that's why probably the chat is not there even as an option.
Yeah. We can do a get to know the leaders, the speakers. Q&A.
Let me create another thing I always wanted to try, and that's creating a Jamboard for this session. And then I'm gonna put in like a banner that will be back in. Let's do 25, 20. No, what was the time when we started? 15. Let's do 12, 15.
Yeah. Cool.
Let's do it like this.
Yeah, great idea. Okay, so see you in 20 minutes.
See you in 20 minutes. Hello. Welcome back.
Hey.
Hey. Lars is left. Leave us with all the work ourselves.
He left not too long ago. I think he might be just trying to reconnect or fix something. Maybe. Hope so. Wait, I may need to, like, what do you think? So you guys are like going to be finishing your day soon, or as far as the stream goes, I mean, we could keep it on. I don't know.
I would like to have a cluster.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
How was your lunch?
Oh, fat. And I had to help with math homework also, so it was very exciting. All right, so I'm curious here. I switched to Chrome. Let's see about sharing part of the screen. Oh, fabulous. Maybe. I mean, we'll see how this works out.
Yeah, we can see all the screen. Yeah.
And you see the window I just dragged onto the screen?
Yes.
Yay, okay. Perfect. That means I can stick stuff over there that is going to be, actually out of question, you can now see when I've just done a expose thing, right? Like
Yes.
you said, okay, so I need to be aware of what I'm hiding behind the windows also. That's good to know. All right. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just powering up all of the hardware in the cluster. And once it's booted, I'm going to go in and wipe things. Since I'm not actually sharing this now, I'm going to just change the size of this a little bit. So, you know, one of the advantages of deploying OpenShift into OpenStack is that you're running on top of virtual machines, so you don't have to wait 10 minutes for them to boot.
For me, it's interesting to find out that like most of the OpenShift installs are not actually running on bare metal and are
well,
in some
support for bare
sort of
metal is very new, actually. I think that's only recently that's been really a supported platform.
Precisely. And that's actually a pretty interesting finding to me. Like I was expecting that bare metal is a foundation that like you built on top of, and
Yeah.
it's actually the opposite.
You know, for a long time, our suggestion was basically use AWS. So let's see if I can get some other console windows up here while that one's going there. If we come back over here, and we'll probably find out that my authentication is expired. No, okay, that's nice. And I'm sure we're going to see all kinds of errors on the console because they're going to be looking for host names that no longer exist, but that's okay. We just need to be able to log in. All right, so we have consoles open for the three systems now. What is this one doing over here? So 1734 is Control 0. Is it alive? Let's see. There we go. It is alive. Oops, that's not anywhere where there's useful inventory. Are you waiting for something? I'm not sure what that window is doing. Get back to that in a second. So this one is, seriously? Thought we killed the provisioner. Let's see. We did kill the provisioner. All right. So this one here is control 0, and it's just dead. So we're just going to try this first. If that doesn't work, which it apparently doesn't, we're going to come back to the UI here and power cycle the system after putting in our password again. Okay.
So you almost troubles getting the system just to boot. I'm actually surprised you managed to have an OpenShift cluster running in there.
Oh, this is why for the new hardware we are purchasing brand new systems for the control plane, so that this is not an issue we have to muck about with. Ideally, so the problem we have here is that all of this software, all of this hardware is both older and out of warranty. So if we run into problems where things seem to be getting stuck, we don't have any course of action other than power cycling and trying again. And I'm completely distracted. What am I doing here? I am looking for the password for this iDRAC. There it is.
It reminds me the work of the Rubicon team that is working on Power 9 installation on the MOC also. Right. So they're working daily with those consoles and it's not reacting and they're disconnecting them. Yeah, I feel sorry for them to go through it.
So it's possible that that console wasn't actually stuck. It is possible that simply our authentication expired. And I think that seems likely. Sure, do I have already a window open here? Let's just close that and reopen it. Well, it was doing something, so we'll just give it a second. So what's still not coming up? A couple of the controllers, really Okay, but some of these are failing because the host key is changed. That's fine. We can fix that. Let's see here. Let's just get rid of all the old ones there. See how we're doing. Ooh, that's exciting. We apparently don't have SSH access before. Am I lying or am I still running? Nope. We appear to have lost our SSH credentials for accessing some of these controllers. Possibly CoreOS is resetting something when it comes up and can't find any of those DNS addresses. So that will be exciting. OS work 2.0.massopen.cloud. But that system is legitimately not booting. So let's see what's going on there. Power is on. Try that again. And that system is just, I think, dead there. So we will bring this one back up.
Why do you think that he's asking for a password?
For these, it looks like the SSH credentials have been removed from the host. And my only guess is that something in CoreOS is doing that, because when it starts up, it tries to apply the machine configs on the systems, which include the SSH authorized key configuration. And maybe if that fails, you end up with no access to the system.
And you don't have the SSH for the provisioner to the cluster itself?
Well, we can try. That's actually not a bad idea. Let's see if the provisioner key can get us in. Should be. Yeah, there's stuff there. So core at os control 1.0.massopen.cloud. Yeah, nope.
No.
Just checking. Nope. So for those systems, we're probably going to have to do it through the BIOS, which that's okay. It's just going to slow us down a little more. So work 2 is coming up. So everything else is just the controller. So let's wait for the system to finish booting. We'll take care of everything that came up. Make sure we haven't lost access to others. And 1735 is the one I'm waiting on. So for the systems that are running right now, I'm just running the wipe disk across all of them while we're waiting for the system to come up. So that takes care of those drives. And while that's sitting there, let's come back to our controllers and get into the RAID BIOS on these. So 1734 looks kind of dead. Let's see if it reboots. Don't think so. So we come back, whoops, come back here, go away, 1734. We're just going to power cycle that one. I feel like I've lost a window in here. And then here we will reboot that. Okay, great. That one's coming up, and we want this one back. Oh, actually, that one seems to already be on. Okay, so then we have this here and this here, and we are just going to wait for those to get to the prompt there and get into the RAID controller. And OS work 2 is, I guess, up. Let's see if we can get into it. All right, so from here we can do operations, initialization, fast init. Yes. And let's just do this so I don't get confused as to what one I've done. Here, 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 here. And then this one. Great. All right, so in theory, we have either run wipe disk in the operating system or we have done a fast init from the BIOS for all of the systems in the cluster now. So we are going to power everything off. And then we're going to power everything on and just make sure that they successfully fail to boot so that we don't trip up again. The other issue that we've run into with these systems, and I don't know if we'll see it today or not, is that sometimes during the network booting process, they hit a firmware crash of some kind, but not reliably.
We also have had this problem with one server. Yeah.
So let's see here. We have, I think, 4 consoles open right now. We'll just watch these and hope that they're a representative sample. Guess we can make these smaller. Let's see here. Meanwhile, while those are going, get rid of this. Yep, come back here and destroy the cluster again. Do. That is promising. That is weird. Where is that booting from? That looks fine. Not entirely sure where this one is pulling its boot image from, but didn't boot off of the local disk, so I'm going to call that success and just turn everything off. Oh, because we do still have the Bootstrap VM running. Okay, I was looking in the wrong place. We want to just destroy that. And this is something else we've brought up with the ACM team, is that when you cancel an install, it doesn't clean up the Bootstrap VM, which if you were to try to start a new install with that one still running, you'd end up with IP conflicts and everything would just fail. But that should be better. Let's get this back. Stop that. Let's get this back to a root window. Here, great. And let's kick off the cluster again. And actually, make sure that's up to date. Yep. All right, here we go again.
The creation of the namespace is already with the manifests?
Yeah, so if you look at the customization file here, the very first thing that includes is namespace.yaml, which looks like this.
Okay.
And that creates a namespace. And actually, maybe someone else on the call knows this. Does customize apply any ordering to the resource it creates, or does it just put them together in the order you've listed them in the resources section?
It does. It does order the manifests.
It does?
Mm-hmm.
So other than putting namespaces first, do you know what it does? Like how does it know the ordering of arbitrary resources?
It's using some kind of an complex algorithm to do that.
Okay.
It's putting like the CRDs to the front of the manifest and things like that. So
okay.
Yeah.
So in theory, this would have worked even if I didn't list the namespace first.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Hey, I have another question about customize, if you guys want to field that while we're waiting for things to happen here.
Sure, go ahead.
So if you look here, I'm generating this. This is where I'm generating the provider metadata. And the thing I'm running into is that I really sometimes want to generate a secret from a file, but I want to rename the thing so that, like, I would like to have the file to have an extension on it. So, you know, when you open it with an editor, it's correctly detected and all of that kind of thing. But I want the secret to not have that extension, because the secret has to have a specific name. Do you know is there any way to handle that?
Like the secret key, like the key in the secret to have
Yeah,
a specific...
so right, like exactly like here when I'm using a secret generator and I'm providing a list of files, each file name becomes a key in the generated secret.
You put like the name dot extension equals the file.
Like I can do like this?
Yes.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Like the other way around. First is the key that appears in the secret, and then it's
like that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. I'll fiddle with that.
Like there's this doc.
And when you say this doc, you are putting it, okay, in the meet chat.
Yeah.
So literal shows that syntax.
Mm-hmm. But it works for anything.
It does, okay. So actually, if I blah, blah equals that, and then if I were to customize build and grep blah, fabulous.
But currently the documentation for customize is kind of scattered all over the place. So.
Oh, it sure is, especially when you get into like generator options and things like that.
Yeah. I tried to do some PRs for their documentation, and in the meantime, they've relocated the documentation to a different repository. It's just like opening PRs all over the place again. Homer, you tried to say something, and we didn't hear you pretty much.
No, it's fine. You got it.
Okay, keep your...
Is the audio okay? Like, can you guys hear me? I just like got this Bluetooth mic to work, so I can't tell if it's...
You're a little low fidelity. I guess I would call it that. We can hear you, but it's a little thin.
Okay. I'll listen to it. Thanks.
Something's booting.
Something's whatting?
In the Tmux, I can see that something's booted.
Yes, this is the Bootstrap VM here. And again, I'm just waiting for the provision network IP to show up.
What's with the trade?
It's for if you ever type ls as SL, you get the steam locomotive. All right, so we have a provisioning network. If you've got the SL command installed.
That's what.
All right, so here we go. And now we wait for our ironic stuff to come back up and cross our fingers.
In the installation, they are using Terraform, right? Because I saw formats of.
Yes. All right. Ironic services are starting to come up again. So you should see stuff coming online soon. All right, so in theory, these systems have started booting. So let's bring the consoles to the front. So the theory is that the installer brings up the controllers, and once they are up, the install process transitions to the controllers, and they're responsible for bringing up the worker nodes.
Lars,
Yes.
thank you for letting us being part of this, because for me to imagine
I wish it was more exciting.
it's exciting enough for me. It's like magic happening. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's a pleasure. I will say if we hit another hardware problem, I'm probably going to call for a break.
Don't do that. I can't drink more coffee today.
No, I meant like a permanent break for today. Like, I think it's getting late for people, and if we hit more hardware issues, if they don't have a clear solution, then we call it a break on the recording, and maybe I spend some time just poking at the hardware for a bit, and maybe we resume tomorrow or something like that. But let's see what happens here.
It looks like in logs that something was powered on. So maybe
Yes.
we can run the Ansible again to see.
So in theory, we have the 3 systems here powered on. I don't think anything else should be online yet. Let's take a look. Yeah. So right now, it's the 3 controllers are online.
I'm sorry, I interrupt somebody. I'm sorry. How they put like this the penguin in a image, like a image?
That's something that Linux has supported on the console for a long time now. That it puts up one tux the penguin for each processor core you have.
Okay. Cool.
Those are the important features.
Yes.
It's interesting how much somebody worked on that.
Kind of makes you wonder what the third system is doing right now.
But it was a bit delayed from the others too. Like
it was, but it also seems like it takes longer for different steps than the other systems do, and I'm not sure what's going on there. Like I would have, we haven't seen the Linux console boot in this window yet.
It's stubborn.
All right, so these two systems look like they have just reported their inspection data up to the conductor. So let's do a quick investigation there. Not conductor, inspector. Well, those have come up and correctly identified a disk. Now we're just wondering about this system here.
do you know which one is it? Was it the
Yes,
one?
this is control 0.
Is that the one that was problematic from the beginning? You know, that one that was freezing and.
I am not 100% positive. One of the other systems, like OS Work 2, is another one that I had to kick to get it to boot up successfully. I am going to go ahead and just do a hard reset on this system and see if it will come up again and successfully boot. I don't know what the timeout is on the inspection stage. If we're lucky, we'll just be able to have it come back up and everything will continue. And of course, we have multiple timeouts that we're waiting on here. The installer itself probably has its own timeouts for the hardware, but then ACM presumably also has some kind of a timeout value, and I don't know what that is. So we may discover that as we wait for things to finish up here. So in theory, what are these systems going to do? I think they'll just potentially sit there in the inspection client until other things continue.
Pod log says for master host to creation complete. That's one I get.
Yeah, for the master too, it says that. Yeah.
Yeah, it should say that for probably both of the two of the controllers.
Right.
But I think what they'll do at that point is just sit here at the inspector until such time as the process goes a step further. But I guess we'll find out.
Right now it's reporting the creation complete. Oh, now it's reported the second one.
That's the one.
Yeah. Now it's reported the second one with like a 19 minutes, 58 seconds elapsed. And It's waiting for the 0.1. Yeah.
I'm going to post the time it took. So that's the thread.
We can't hear you pretty well, Homer. So if you were saying something important, you need to repeat it. Okay, it probably wasn't important.
Only after it boot the thread, it will continue to the workers?
So after the third controller boots successfully, what should happen is that we'll do the OpenShift install onto the controller nodes, bring up OpenShift there, then the controller nodes are responsible for running the install on the workers.
Yeah.
So it's just the same scenario as you would like upsize and downsize the cluster, right? Adding new nodes.
I believe that that's the case, that it's using exactly the same mechanism at that point.
Mm-hmm. One node is very slow.
Seems to be.
It should be the same hardware, right?
They should be all approximately the same. We can, if we get the inspection data from this node ever, we can double check that.
Boot failed.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's the local one, right?
Yeah.
How's my mic now? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You're a little quiet, but we can hear you.
You better shout at us.
Yeah, I'll try to talk louder, and then I'll look into this afterwards.
So I just had a question. We haven't given up yet. Thank you, ACM. So this is the point we expect to see the Linux console pop up almost immediately now. There we go.
There was some failed messages.
That's okay.
Lars,
Yes?
got a question for you that I don't quite understand with the ironic stuff. Like, where are you looking at that?
So the ironic services are running inside a virtual machine. Sorry, they're running in a set of Podman containers on a virtual machine on the provisioning host.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
All right.
So it's like a different level of abstraction, hidden magic from us.
It is, and we couldn't even decide on which abstraction layers we want because we have 2 container runtimes. We have the virtualization in there, which doesn't seem to do much except add complexity to the process. And then, of course, the provisioner host itself. So my preference would be that the services are running containerized on the provisioner host without the virtual machine being stuck in the middle, but we're not there yet. And I think that's because they want CoreOS as the underlying platform for what they're doing. So that's why they boot up the virtual machine.
I can't imagine trying to figure all of this out like myself, because the learning curve is above everything.
Well, there are certainly lots of pieces you have to know. And like I was fortunate that I knew a little bit about Ironic coming into this, for example. That's been helpful in doing some of the diagnostics and figuring out, what's going on or, what's not reporting correctly. And not everyone's going to come in with that. Like, who knows Ironic? So there are all kinds of pieces here right now.
The Bootstrap VM is a CoreOS?
The Bootstrap VM, I believe, is Red Hat CoreOS. Let's see, am I lying? Let's come back here out to the core.
Because when we do a disconnected environment, we put up 2 images, one for the Bootstrap and one for the CoreOS servers.
Yeah, so it is running CoreOS, in theory, the same version that's going to be used on the cluster. One of the things that the inspection process does is it does some LLDP inspection of the network interfaces to try to figure out to what they're connected, and that's included in the inspection data as well. That's what it's waiting for right now.
Can you repeat your last sentence?
Sure.
My internet
the inspector uses LLDP to figure out to what switch ports the network interfaces are connected, so it can report that along with the other inspection data.
And we're slowly approaching a 30 minutes timestamp on the still creating in the pod on ACM side. So hopefully that's not the timeout.
Well, in theory, we're just about to trigger the next step in the process, because this node has just completed inspection.
Exactly. So hopefully.
So we've totally got all of those, and if we make sure they've all got drives defined, they do. All right.
The ACM pod is still waiting. It has a bit of a delay.
Well, nobody's reporting an error state so far, so that's good. So we probably don't care about this output anymore. So this is the system journal on the Bootstrap VM here. And one of the frustrating things about trying to do error diagnosis on this system, if you're watching the log, there's tons of errors, and they're all expected because it tries to create resources, until it is able to. So when you start poking around the logs looking for errors, there's a lot of false positives. So let's see here. What are our other nodes doing here? Nothing so far. And is our...
And we're just over the 30 minutes time
Yep.
stamp, so it was not the time limit there. Good. Hopefully it's not like 31 minutes.
That would be an evil, evil trick to play on somebody. All your timeouts are not on even half-hour boundaries. Did that say something new there?
Yes, it completed.
Yes. Fantastic.
Great. So now it should be installing OpenShift, right?
Soon. Oh, we have an error.
Oh.
Could not
Expecting
fetch data. Really?
Giving up after 5 attempts.
Whoops, I didn't want that one. This one.
Okay.
Who's reporting that even? Is that? I don't know. I can fetch it. 185, 104. Who is that? Yeah, that's us. So who's reporting that? These nodes don't appear. Are these consoles? Yeah, these consoles are telling the truth. They're not. And is this container dead? Yes, it is. Let's come back here. Oh, that is sad. Well, let's just check one thing here. OC debug this.
Well, it seems like it's not just about the API response, but it's trying to parse something out of it. The irony.
Wait, I thought no. It's wait. Was it a parsing error or? Oh, let's see here. Let me see. Could not fetch data, giving up after 5 attempts. I can't tell whether it's a parsing error or whether it was a timeout. Let's take a look at what's in that data. I think we can get that from here.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another issue over here, which is that
It can't connect to it.
yes, that's interesting. So first of all, do we have working outbound? That wouldn't work. Yes, okay. So that works. And that works. Oh, that works. Oh, wait a second. Oh, I see. It's connecting to the... All right, so where am I? We want to be on this system.
This is supposed to be with the S for the HTTP.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But even if it wasn't, it's not getting a protocol negotiation error. It is just failing to connect. It's getting connection refused. So
the port is a broken problem.
So something is listening. The input chain default accept. It's got a bunch of accept rules, but they don't matter. Kube firewall has a drop rule. So I don't see an open port for this.
Yeah, I don't see either.
So if we add that explicitly, I input 1 -p TCP -d port 22623-j accept. No, that's not the problem. I don't. Oh no, that might be the problem still, but it shouldn't be. Let's try something else instead. Can we do this? No. Podman run privilege net equals host alpine docker.io/alpine shell apk add TCP dump. Oh, that's okay. We don't expect it to be on that interface anyway. We expect it to be on this interface. But it's not. Well, that's a mystery. Let's come out one level of abstraction to here. So that comes in where we expect it. But that's not. Is there? Everything here is accept. What? Oh. Well, that's weird.
What those
Oh, yeah, that's routable. That's why. Sorry, say again.
What those? What do you check with those two commands?
So this. So what I was. For a machine on the same network, I wanted to make sure that it was pulling the correct MAC address, but it doesn't matter because this is a container running on the ACM host, so it's not directly connected to the network, so it's not going to see the MAC addresses of remote hosts because it's reaching them over a layer 3 connection. So that actually didn't tell me anything interesting. But if we back out here and log into one of your controllers, actually probably easiest to do this. Because I can't spell. So this has a port on the same network as our target system. And it sees, that's fine. And it sees F69C, and it sees the correct MAC address. And it sees connections on port 80. I am somewhat confused right now, I will be honest. Oh, well, sure, we don't mind that. So we can certainly get there from here. But if we take this and we just start from our provisioner.zero.massopen.cloud, and that works better if you type names correctly. Provisioner.zero.cloud. And that works fine here. And that is, where am I right now? This is right on the node. Do we have this? No, okay. Well, somebody else must be managing this network space. All right. Oh, because I'm inside a container here. No, a debug pod. Right, so we want to root host. And looking at BREX. Right, of course. And we can't install. Don't think I can do this. Maybe I can. And then we get another window open onto that system. DRL. Whoops. Oh, I can't do that because I've already got a debug pod open. Oh, and it killed me over there too. All right, that's going to be a shame. Okay, let's get SSH keys in place then. see if that works. It did not. Okay, that's why. Well, let's do it in the core account then. Yes. All right, now we can just log in normally without having to go through debug pods. All right, so we've already established we don't have that available to us. All right, so now if we try, that doesn't even seem to be leaving the cluster. Ah. Oh. So that's interesting. Are folks seeing what I'm seeing on the screen here?
Yeah, reject.
There are output rules on this cluster that would prohibit connection to that URL. So I'm still not clear looking at the log from Hive there, where exactly that error is being generated, but if it's happening, if it's not relaying an error from the provisioning host, then it looks like this is part of the problem. And in fact, if we were to do that, then all of a sudden that works as if by magic. And if we were to back out of here and debug our Hive node, well,
the rules seem so specific and like intentional, though.
yeah, they do. And we hadn't gotten this far with the install we tried doing on Friday because of the hardware compatibility issues we ran into. So it's possible we would have hit this on Friday also if we'd been able to get past that point. So, but we still don't have connectivity from within this pod here, even though we have it from outside. So where? Oh, that's because now it's the forwarding rule that's doing it. So if we were to iptables forward tables-input forward 1-ptcp-d port 22623-j accept. That should fix it. No. So none of those rules are getting hit. And who has that address? Oh, goodness. All right, I think at this point, I'm going to open a support ticket and hit up the ACM folks to see if they've seen something like this before.
Yeah, the rules seem intentional in there and seems like very specific to be a random error. So
no, absolutely, but it possibly a bug.
Yes.
Or yeah.
But
So
it seems like someone intentionally put those reject rules in there, but
I suspect it's because that this this URL probably is meant to be the service on port 22623 is supposed to be some kind of cluster local service, and that those rules are probably in place to prevent communication accidentally outside of the cluster for like sensitive information or something. That's my best guess, but I don't know. So let's see what we can figure out. I'm going to leave everything in the current state for the moment and bug some folks and see what we can do.
Yeah, that sounds like the best option we have right now.
All right. Well, in that case, I'm declaring this stream closed for now, I guess, and we'll post probably some updates in that ticket as we find new information. How's that sound as a plan?
Sounds good.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. I'll let you know what I find out.
Thank you.
Successfully located new bugs. So,
Bye, guys.
thank you. Take care. Bye.